Welcome back to 7-Minute Case Cover, where we tell you all about current Canadian crime.
In today's episode, we will be covering the tragic case of Marco Muzo.
In Toronto, Canada, on September 27, 2015, Marco Muzo, a director in his grandfather's billion-dollar construction company, was driving home from the airport after his own bachelor party when he ran through a stop sign and crashed into a car with 6 people in it. The passengers in the vehicle included 3 children, their grandparents, and their great-grandmother. The crash resulted in serious injuries of the grandmother and great-grandmother, as well as the death of all 3 children, Harry, Millie, and Daniel Neville Lake, and their grandfather, Gary Neville.
It was revealed that the cause of the crash was that Muzo was driving under the influence of alcohol. The Saturday night before the incident, he consumed alcohol until early hours of the morning and on his flight home the next morning. He had 3 to 4 alcoholic drinks. His blood alcohol concentration at the time of the collision was 190 to 200 milligrams of alcohol to 100 milliliters of blood. The legal limit of blood alcohol concentration is 80 milligrams of alcohol to 100 milliliters of blood, or 0.08. His intoxication may have caused him to drive 20 kilometers over the legal speed limit as well as run a stop sign.
For a guy who killed 4 people, you would think that his sentence would be quite extensive.
Yeah, you would think so, but Marco Muzo's sentence was quite a shock to the public.
On March 29, 2016, the judge sentenced Muzo to 4 10-year sentences for each death, as well as 5 years per person injured. However, the judge stated that he could serve all of these sentences concurrently.
Concurrent sentencing means that the sentencing of different crimes may be served all at the same time.
This means that Muzo will spend 10 years total in prison instead of 50 years. Additionally, he may also be eligible for parole just after 3 years in prison, which is a third of his sentence. Upon release from prison, he will also be banned from driving for 12 years.
There are many controversial opinions regarding Muzo's sentencing from the victim's family and the rest of society. Here is a clip of Jennifer Neville Lake, the mother of the 3 children killed and the daughter of their grandfather, who was also killed.
I guess to start off with, 10 years. All I can keep thinking in my head is my son never made it to 10 years. Daniel was killed when he was 9 years, 7 months, and 24 days, which is similar to the sentence with credit of time served that the drunk driver Marco Muzo killed him will be serving if he served the full time.
Many members of society do not agree with Muzo's sentence. I believe 10 years is too harsh. There is no point in depriving more life by serving time in prison. Muzo already apologized for what he did. He seems very regretful and remorseful, and so putting him in jail wouldn't do him any good.
Others said the sentence was too harsh or reasonable. If he killed 4 people with a knife or a gun, would he still get 10 years? If not, then it's not a fair sentence. It was murder and entirely preventable, and his weapon of choice was a vehicle, so that's the only difference. The public's frustration regarding Muzo's sentencing could be due to his liability to the crime.
There are 2 different types of liability in criminal law.
First of all is strict liability. A person may admit that they're responsible for committing a crime, but they did everything in their power to avoid it. In other words, they did their due diligence.
And then there's absolute liability, which means a person is completely responsible for committing the crime, and they have no defense whatsoever.
Muzo is absolutely liable as he chose to get into his car after knowing that he consumed multiple alcoholic beverages on his flight. According to him, he stated that he didn't think he was drunk upon entering his vehicle. This is why some people may see this as a case of strict liability. However, he did not do all the required tests to confirm he wasn't drunk, such as the field sobriety test or the chemical blood test. This means that he did not perform his due diligence, and therefore he is absolutely liable.
The majority of people believe that Muzo is absolutely liable for the deaths and injuries he caused.
But then, why would he only get sentenced to 10 years if he was absolutely liable?
That is the popular question of people who are upset about this sentencing. But there were many things to consider when the judge was determining Muzo's sentence. These determinants include the circumstances of the offender, the victim, and society.
Starting off with the offender, the judge most likely ordered a pre-sentence investigation on Muzo to uncover any useful information in relation to the case. It was discovered that Muzo did not have any previous criminal record with the exception of provincial offenses, including intoxication in public and reports of speeding in his neighborhood. He also had no history of alcohol abuse and was declared by a psychiatrist that he was at low risk for recidivism, otherwise known as reoffending after release from prison. It was also uncovered that Muzo did not think he was intoxicated when he landed in Toronto and got into his car.
Overall, his pre-sentence life was considered very positive, as Muzo greatly contributed to the well-being of society.
Here's a statement from Muzo's lawyer, Mr. Brian Greenspan.
Mr. Muzo's conduct was a terrible decision made by a good person. We have received many letters of support proving that Muzo has led a virtually exemplary life, that he is regarded as a person of character, and that he has made positive contributions to the community. His driving records show that he has had no demerit points at the time of collision. Mr. Muzo pleaded guilty at the earliest opportunity, and he has carried through with his extraordinary speed. His acceptance of responsibility and his remorse and sense of guilt are all honest.
Moving on, the judge also looked at the circumstances of the victim and how the case affected them and their families. A victim impact statement was presented to the judge and the offender in court. 10 family members and friends contributed to the document, and all stated that Muzo's actions produced a tragedy beyond comprehension. Here is a statement from Nariza Nabil, speaking her mind to Muzo after the crash.
No grandchildren to see on the weekends. No husband to grow old with. You took everything from me.
Many agree that the small sentence of 10 years, or possibly even 3 years, in prison is nothing compared to the life sentence that will be faced by the Nabil Lake family.
In many cases, the third factor the judge looks at is the circumstances of the case in relation to society. Did you know that every 51 minutes someone is killed by a drunk driver in America? This proves that drunk driving is a serious offense and should not be taken lightly when determining sentencing for anyone's decisions to drive under the influence. In Muzo's case, however, the fact that he is unlikely to reoffend means that he is not a huge danger to society.
Now we will look at possible solutions. It's nearly impossible to determine a certain amount of years a person should serve for any crime, but it is possible to require those in prison to give back to society in a way other than just being punished. By putting Muzo in prison, it represents retribution, as his punishment satisfies popular public opinion. An alternative solution, in addition to his sentence, would be the concept of restitution, where the offender pays back society for the harms they've caused. In Marco Muzo's case, after being released from prison, he should be required to join a drinking and driving organization, such as Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Students Against Destructive Decisions, Sober Ride, Smart and Sober, Drunk Driving Prevention Organization, to raise awareness about the harms of driving under the influence. This way, not only will the offender have to serve their time and be punished for their crime, but they will also have the opportunity to deter others from committing the same crimes.
Overall, the case of Marco Muzo has caused an uproar in society about the faults and consequences of drinking and driving. Hopefully this week's video has been informative to you guys so you can form your own opinions about this week's case.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next week on
7-Minute Case Cover!